Food and football are on the agenda for today's Breaking Views. Does global warming threaten a food price shock? And it could be an unlucky Friday the 13th for the Scottish football club, formerly known as Rangers. With me now to discuss these stories is Reuters Breaking Views' Chris Hughes. Chris, freak weather patterns around the world, from Russia to the States, are ramping up food prices. This is the last thing that the world's population, especially the poor, needs right now, isn't it?
Yeah, we've seen this terrible US drought have this massive impact on corn prices, and then you've also got problems in Russia with the wheat crop too. The good news, if you like, is that this takes place against the backdrop actually of commodity prices easing. Obviously commodities were very bubbly in 2011, but as the Fed in particular has held back on further quantitative easing, a lot of the sort of speculative money that had gone into pumping up commodity prices, including the price of various grains, has actually been coming back. So while we've seen some sort of big jumps in the price of the specific crops affected by this rather extreme weather, it actually doesn't appear to be having a big overall effect on overall global food price inflation. So for now, the sort of short-term
but there's a real chance that actually transpires.
I think the point is that just because it's not going to kick in necessarily to really ramping up global food price inflation overall, it doesn't mean that one can ignore what is happening, because quite clearly there is a medium-term upward pressure here. If we see more of this kind of weather-related, climate change, global warming, whatever you want to call it, effect, then the possibility of further disruption of food price spikes is going to become greater, and that is potentially a very serious issue. So don't be too complacent about the sort of seemingly modest overall impact at the moment.
Well, central banks in Asia and the developing world, obviously, they pay very close attention to food price spikes, and that often influences their policy decisions. Are we at a stage, or possibly getting to a stage, where that may apply to developed world central banks as well, or not?
I don't think we're at that stage yet. It does appear as though broadly, in terms of supply, we're not at a sort of critical moment. But it's more about this. It's more about looking at the sort of long-term trend here, and the fact that it's hard to see how this is going to be managed effectively, and quite clearly it's going to become a bigger factor in driving what central banks decide to do with monetary policy.
Okay, now let's move on to football. As I said in the intro there, Rangers, or the club formerly known as Rangers today, awaits its fate. Could be demoted to the second or fourth tier of Scottish football for well-documented tax indiscretions. But you are drawing parallels with that and the banks.
Yeah, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on soccer, let alone Scottish soccer. But obviously, what we've got here is one of the well, you'll be the expert on this one, Jamie. But the one of the former top clubs has hit some financial difficulties, as you say, some questionable tax affairs, and it's under the rules of the game. It's now going to sort of go crash straight down to the bottom of the league. Now, the trouble with this is that actually has a damaging effect on, if you like, the football system, because if you take a top team out of all the kind of big games, then everyone's going to suffer the financial fallout with this somewhat reckless club that was giving itself effectively an unfair advantage by bidding up for the best players. So how do you deal with it? And that is very similar to what you see in banking. You want to punish banks that are reckless and take crazy risks, but you can't sort of let them fail, because it'll have a terrible effect on the rest of the system. Now, what we would say is that actually there is a difference here. This is football, and in a way that the analogy goes only so far. And actually, probably what you should do in this case, is actually, this is one situation where even though there is moral hazard, you probably can let the football club fail, and you need to you have more preparation in the system for that financial fallout. But we would argue for a very strong line on moral hazard in Scottish soccer, and clearly you've got to be a bit more pragmatic about dealing with it in finance.
Well, sporting integrity, and whether it be integrity in the sporting world or the banking world, I mean, surely that's of paramount importance.
Well, certainly, I think that the lesson is, just as one doesn't want reckless banks, we don't want reckless football teams either.
Indeed. Well, we await to see what happens with the club formerly known as Rangers. Chris, thank you very much. That's all for now. My thanks there to Breaking Views' Chris Hughes. For more insight and analysis, do watch our US Breaking Views show every day at 12:30 Eastern, 17:30 British Summer Time. I'm Jamie McGeever. This is Reuters.